Wow. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction, Father. And I want to thank you and Kathy, and I want to thank Carter Anderson and all those who are responsible for inviting me here, as I'm a stranger to you. It's an honor. I'm very impressed, though, on this St. Patrick's Day, to be in a room with hundreds of men and not an ounce of booze. I guess this is Lent, isn't it? I'm proud of my Irish heritage, actually, because it's my entire life I've lived with this awful gnawing sense of impending doom. This comes when you're Irish. You know, you're always looking around the corner to see what can go wrong. So let's see how this goes tonight. But I greet all you dads in the room. I know you're proud of your sons. I know that feeling. I have 4 sons of my own, and they mean the world to me, although my daughter means more to me than they do. She was born after her brothers, so Mary and I had to change our parenting styles a little bit. We wanted her to have a normal childhood until she entered the convent. And so that convent idea, though, didn't click with her. She wasn't into getting up at 4:40 in the morning or wearing the same clothes or not listening to Billie Eilish. So she turned 21. She's in college. I don't want her dating anyone. So I brought some flyers about her for you guys that have older sons. I've had flyers if you want to, I can do an arranged marriage tonight. Have her part of the Jesuit family here. I'd put a dowry in there. I saw that $550,000. We could devote that to throw that in the kitty. Getting my sons to marry, though, is a different thing entirely. They range in age from 24 to 31. The oldest is married, and he and Carolyn have 3 grandchildren, my 3 grandchildren, which is great, but I want more. And as you can plainly see, I'm not getting any younger. And by the time my 3 sons get around to having kids, Biden and Trump will probably be running against each other for the 5th time. Don't get me started on that. So I don't know about you, I'm writing in Father Hermes for president this year. Yeah. Being at this dinner, though, brings back to mind a lot of my own high school memories. I went to Bishop Kenny High School in Jacksonville, Florida. The year I was a freshman, I was the 2nd smallest boy at Bishop Kenny. Thank God for that little Filipino boy. But by October, he had a growth spurt, which didn't work for me. I never had a growth spurt. In fact, puberty hasn't hit my voice yet. So, but I remember signing up for JV basketball. I was a good 8th grade basketball player. And I had to do the sign-up sheet. And I put down for my height 4'11" and 90 pounds, even though I was 4'10" and 85 pounds. That did not impress the coach. I got cut. I got therapy too. I'm fine now about it. It's not a big deal, but I'm going to have my 50th high school reunion this year. So you can do the math on how old I am. But those high school years leave lasting impressions and teach lessons about coping and persevering and never quitting, never losing hope, and above all, trusting in God. My parents divorced when I was young, and my mom raised us. And my dad moved to Illinois, and I basically went years without seeing him. And I didn't get to know him until I was an adult like he, and I learned a lot about his life and understood him better and the beauty of his life. And so I didn't have that father figure at your age, students of Tampa Jesuit, but I had coaches and priests and others who helped me become a man. And then as I got to know my dad better, he finished the work. So my remarks are directed to you young men of this great institution. You're in an age where you're moving through adolescence and approaching early adulthood. And it's an exciting time, a time for you to dream and wonder and explore. And our culture doesn't make it very easy for you during this period. Some forces want to treat you like adults and expose you to gambling and pornography and drugs and alcohol. And others want to baby you, treat you like you're a victim, so that you don't learn how to cope and deal with life and its disappointments and deal with adversity and become a man. When I was in academia for 13 years, I witnessed how universities acted as if the college years were an extension of childhood instead of an end to it. So you're fortunate that you have a dad or father figure in your life who's there to shepherd you, to help you navigate this thicket, help you deepen your awareness that you are a gift from God, formed in the palm of God's hand, and that you are precious and you're loved. And in the process of your education at Tampa Jesuit, with the fine faculty you have there, you're directed toward the transition from being self-centered to other-minded. And if you make that transition successfully, it will define your life. If society doesn't facilitate this change, we end up with a narcissistic world full of self-centered people. And we don't have shepherds who think of helping others instead of promoting themselves. Your world disproportionately is shaped by social media, and it has many heroes. Instagram and TikTok stars, influencers, entertainers, sports superstars, and those you are told are worthy of your admiration. And many of these celebrities are worthy of it, and some aren't. Some have celebrity without much real accomplishment. So remember this, fellas. Being well known is not greatness. Goodness is greatness. I want to talk about two people whose goodness made them great. They both came from humble circumstances and they faced tremendous adversity. They learned how to cope and how to serve. They were beautifully human. The first person was a guy named Charles. He went to a small Catholic high school that offered some of the same type of education that you receive at Jesuit. He studied history, language, literature, mathematics. He actually became the class valedictorian. And those who knew Charles said he was a regular kid in high school. He was the goalie on his soccer team. He participated in school plays. He wrote poetry. And he was also fun to be around. He used to imitate his teachers so well that his classmates roared. And one day, he and his friend were playing with a gun, and it accidentally went off, and it almost hit a passing policeman. They caught a break there. But while he had joys at home, he also knew sorrow. When he was in 3rd grade, his mother died. And unfortunately, before he entered high school, his beloved and only brother, whom he admired, died suddenly. These tragedies did not keep young Charles down. After all, he still had his father, his faith in God, and his friends. In fact, those friendships he made during high school were ones he maintained until he died. So there's a lesson there for each one of you. Make an effort to develop these friendships at Jesuit, because in life you need friends. Several of my very best friendships today are ones I made at Kenny. I say this because who you hang out with matters. I saw that on college campuses. Students rose or fell depending on the company they kept. So trust me, the people you hang around with will either bring out the best in you or the worst in you. Pick the ones that are going to help you, not hurt you. But anyway, back to Charles. And now we're at the point in his life when he was like you seniors, about to graduate from high school with all of his dreams and enroll at the university that was his top selection. But little did he know that a year later, his world would be turned upside down. For at age 19, Charles witnessed the cruelty of man at its worst when Nazis rounded up 184 professors of his university and shipped them off to a concentration camp and forced all able-bodied men to work or be deported. Charles was assigned to a quarry where he did back-breaking labor. He was so poor, he only had wooden shoes with which to walk the 30-minute journey to the mine every night. In the winter, the temperature was so cold, as much as 20 degrees below zero, that he used to rub petroleum jelly on his face to keep his skin from freezing. And just when you thought things could not get any worse for Charles, 6 months after he started his work, at age 20, his father suddenly died. And now he was all alone. He had no family, his college dreams were dashed, and all of his bright promise seemed utterly destroyed. And then it got even worse. One night while walking home after a double shift at the factory, Charles was struck by a truck, knocked unconscious, and left lying on the side of the road, bloodied and seemingly dead. Now guys, pause for a moment and picture that dark, lonely road and that man bleeding there, thought to be dead, with no family, no money, and seemingly no future. And do you know who that man was? He was the man who became to be known to the world as Pope John Paul II, one of the great figures of modern history. He's a hero to me and to so many of you. My wife and I admired him so much, we wanted to name one of our sons after him, but this posed a problem because my last name is Towey, and that would have made our son John Paul Towey, which would have been a little weird. So we went with Maximilian. But we had the privilege to meet him and talk with him a couple times, and just saw him as he aged and saw the grace of his life. And what his life teaches us, whether it was his Parkinson's at the end or at this early beginning of his life when he was in the ditch, is that you never lose hope because God has a plan for your life. He manned up when he was knocked down, and you can too. God may seem to be far away in moments like that, but He isn't. He is Emmanuel, God with us, the one who so loved the world that He sent His Son to us. We have this capacity to hope, a capacity which John Paul grew into fruition. The second person I want to talk about is also a saint. I know it's a Catholic dinner, so you're going to hear about saints, right? As you heard in the introduction, I had the privilege of working with and knowing a modern-day saint, George Bush. No, I'm kidding. Just kidding. See if you're listening. No, I had the privilege to work with Mother Teresa of Calcutta, as Father said in his kind introduction. And I knew her the last 12 years of her life. What you didn't hear in my introduction was that the man whom God used to set in motion this friendship is seated here this evening. His name's Randy Stearns. And his son Tyler, who went to Jesuit and played point guard for the basketball team, is sitting right next to him. At that time, I was going door to door in Capitol Hill looking for a job when I met Randy's wife, Jan, and saw on her desk a photo of their adopted daughter from one of Mother Teresa's orphanages in India. Jan told me about this nun far away, and it piqued my curiosity, because at that time in my life, I was a 28-year-old lukewarm Catholic, not following the moral teachings of the Catholic Church, and not really practicing my faith. I was lost. I seemed to be very successful, but inside I was lost. Pascal described sin as licking the earth, and I knew the taste of sin. And the great thing about being a hypocrite is that you can spot hypocrisy everywhere. So I was sitting in judgment of everyone, but the more I learned about Mother Teresa, the more I thought, now there's a woman that's actually living her faith. She's living the gospel. So I wanted to meet her, and a trip Senator Hatfield sent me on allowed me to pass through India on the way home. And so I went into Calcutta, and I met her on August 20th, 1985. It was the week that she turned 75, and she came out after Mass. She bounded out like a schoolgirl, this tiny woman about this tall. It was an amazing moment. She was everything I wasn't. Joyful, purposeful, focused, caring for others, cheerful. She was alive in Christ. I won't go into the whole story. I tell it in the book I wrote that Father mentioned, To Love and to Be Loved. Carter Anderson was kind enough to buy a bunch of these books, and I think they're giving some of them out at the end. Is that right? As people leave? Or is that still the plan? I don't know. I think Kathy said it was. If not, go on Amazon and buy it. Or go to Barnes & Noble. Tell them Jim sent you. No. His father said the sisters get the royalties. But that meeting with Mother changed the direction of my life. And I saw her regularly those next 12 years and got to travel with her some and saw her compassion in action. I actually became her lawyer, as Father said. President Bush used to say when he would introduce me to a group, he'd say, Towey used to be Mother Teresa's lawyer. What kind of a world do we live in when even she had to have a lawyer? But she liked to sue people. I'm kidding. You open that soup kitchen up the street, I'll get you. Yeah. But Mother Teresa didn't have an easy childhood either. She lost her dad when she was 8 years old. He was murdered by a political rival, and this tragedy threw her family into poverty. She grew up and felt called to be a missionary. She said goodbye to her mom at the train station in Zagreb at age 18, and she never saw her mom again. She traveled to India, survived the challenges of World War II and the partitioning of the country after India gained its independence, and she nearly died of exhaustion. Friends, she was one gritty Albanian woman. Over the course of her life, she had 5 heart attacks, a stroke, malaria dozens of times, tuberculosis. She broke her shoulder, she broke her arm, 3 ribs, her leg, different car accidents, 19 stitches. You could go on, not to mention the spiritual darkness when she felt abandoned by God, forsaken and unloved. This was one tough cookie, and it's all in the book. But by the time of her death, this single solitary woman who felt called by God to go in the streets of India, in this ocean of misery, and do something about it. And this woman, by the time of her death, had 3,900 women that had followed her in 120 countries. This is what God can do with individuals willing to be used. She had a compass in life. She knew where she had come from, and she knew where she was going. She knew that she bore the divine image in her body and soul, just like each one of you students. And she saw that eternal dimension of life where she was going one day. When Mary and I'll tell a quick story. When Mary and I were living in Tallahassee, and she was pregnant with our 3rd child, we wanted to get Mother's blessing on the baby. Mother was coming to Washington, and so we left the other 2 at home and hopped on a plane for a day trip to Washington. We get to the foyer of the house. Mother comes out, sees Mary. Oh, Mary, you're pregnant. Mary said, yeah. And she goes, when are you due? And Mary said, I'm due August 8th, but I think I'll be early. We just had Joe. And Mother said, no, you're going to have that baby on my birthday. And I said, Mother, your birthday's August 26th. And if Mary's 18 days late, my life's going to be a living heck. To make a long story short, on the night of August 25th, Mary goes into labor. We're like, oh my gosh, the angels are at work. We're going to have a little girl. We're going to name her Teresa. Midnight strikes, and at 1:20 in the morning, the baby comes out. The doctor says, congratulations, you have a little boy. And we said, are you sure? And he said, yeah, here's how we tell. Used to be that easy back then. Couldn't resist that. But she had the discipline in life to pray. And so after Mary gave birth, the sisters called and said, can you come to Calcutta because Mother's dying? And so Sandy McMurtry, a close friend of Mother's, and I flew to Calcutta. My mom came over to help Mary, took a photo of little Maximilian to show Mother. And we're racing to Calcutta. When we get to the airport, the sisters greet us. They say, Mother's back on oxygen. And so we got to go straight to the hospital. We rushed there. I'm like, please be alive before we get there. When we got to the hospital, went up to the 6th floor of her intensive care unit room. there was this commotion right outside Mother's room, and I thought, oh no, don't tell me she just passed and I missed her. Did Mother pass? And the sister said no. And so I said, what's the commotion? They said, Mother was laying there and she was pointing up at the ceiling like this. And they were all looking up. What is she pointing at? And she looked and she said, she took her oxygen mask to the side and she said, I'm going home. I'm going home to God. This woman had a compass. She knew where she had come from and where she was going. She used to say that if you're too busy to pray, you're too busy. Jesuits teaching you now the art of prayer. You have this opportunity to begin a lifelong conversation with God that can bear much fruit in your life. Because she taught others that as you prayed, you learned that life, she said that a life that's not lived for others is not worth living. And she told her sisters to give until it hurts and to love until it hurts. And she taught the world the joy of serving others. You students will leave Jesuit one day, and there will be many sunny days ahead. Look forward to them. But there will also be days with plenty of stormy weather. And only God can give you the compass you need to know right from wrong and to navigate all of the opportunities and challenges in your life. The world needs manly men. The world needs to see that men have much to contribute and are needed now very much to return the hearts of fathers to their sons. A dinner like this is so refreshing to see this, to see the beauty of these father and son relationships. Because the culture in which we live denigrates motherhood and forgets fatherhood. And this is what happens when you forget God. How else can you explain the attacks we see on life and marriage and family and on religious freedom? Adults who put their own interests ahead of children and the elderly are adults that lead us astray. And it can't be that way with you. You were made for great things, to love and to be loved, as Mother used to say. So yes, students, you are called to be an influencer. Not one on social media, but one in the real world, in the lives of real people. And if you want to find an influencer, look at your dad. Look at your mom. Look at Father. Look at the people who are spending their lives in your service because they love you. This is a privilege. Don't squander it. The very last time I saw Mother Teresa, it was 10 weeks before she died. At that point, she was 87 years old and in a wheelchair, and it was in the Bronx, New York, on the 3rd floor of her headquarters on East 145th Street. I was going over legal matters, trying to stretch the meeting out. I knew I would never see her again. And one sister came over behind the wheelchair after the meeting had gone on a while and said, it's time for Mother to go rest. And I said, Mother, before you go, Mary and the children are down in the courtyard. Can they come up and get your blessing? Before I could even make that request of Mother, could she give them a blessing, Mother Teresa had stood up from her wheelchair and looked excitedly out the window, and she said, where are the children? Where are the children? This was the fruit of a life lived for others, a childlike heart that wanted to play. This is a fruit that is within your reach, students of Tampa Jesuit. And for you fine fathers that raise these fine sons, God bless you and congratulations. And thank you.